Good morning and welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Thursday morning. I hope you're having a great week because it feels like it's about to get an awful lot better. How many of you remember at the beginning of the transfer window getting really frustrated, really upset that West Ham United were not doing any business in the transfer window at all? How many of you were fretting and going on about, the board doesn't want to spend the Declan Rice money, they want to pocket it and all that sort of stuff, and the frustration just grew and grew and grew. Well, it looks like we're about to be given a fantastic present in the transfer window because now, with just 9 days left in the transfer window itself, the club have finally moved on to looking at some attacking players to bring into the squad. And the news broke, I'm sure you all know by now, on Wednesday afternoon, early Wednesday evening, that the deal to bring in Mohammed Kudus from Ajax has finally taken a turn for the better. This is how the story about Kudus has gone, because it's not been an easy one. About a month or so ago, when his name was first mentioned, I was told that there was no interest in the player whatsoever, and that David Moyes had a number of specific targets that he was focusing on. Since then, one by one, those Moyes targets have disappeared into the ether, with just one really having been signed, and that, of course, was James Ward-Prowse. Now, what we have then seen over the past, 3, 4 weeks or so, is a shift in emphasis, the shift in the type of players that we're now targeting. And it's been refreshing to see us aiming for younger players, more exciting players. And many fans would suggest that these are targets influenced by Tim Steidten, of which people are saying Mohammed Kudus is one of them. Now, since being linked to Kudus, the transfer story hasn't been straightforward, with rumours suggesting that for one reason or another, this deal is unlikely to get done. Now, earlier in August, we heard that an offer from Brighton had been accepted by Ajax, but that the deal was difficult to complete because of supposed agent issues. It's not normal, is it, for Brighton to back out of a deal, especially for such a young, exciting prospect? Now, we were told that whilst we were scouting for Edson Alvarez, Kudus attracted the eye, and we finally made our first bid for the player of circa £30 million with add-ons, but that was turned down. At the beginning of this week, we made our second bid, which was a better bid than the one that Brighton originally put in for the player. But West Ham were taken aback when that got turned down as well. Then we heard various reasons as to why that bid had not gone through. One was that the Kudus camp was being difficult, which prompted the player himself to take to social media to dispel these rumours with a simple response by saying, bullshit. Then we heard that Ajax had turned down the second bid because they had changed their stance on the player and that they didn't want to sell him. And then a counter story came up that the Dutch club were hoping for the likes of Chelsea to enter into the fray to start a bidding war for the player. Well, that left us in a dilemma. Do we make a third bid or do we walk away? West Ham decided, thankfully, that a third bid was to be made, and Ajax agreed to it. You think about it, we did much the same with Declan Rice when Arsenal were chasing the player. They put in a bid, we said no. They put in another bid, we said no. And if we thought that they were interested enough, they'd eventually put in the bid that we thought the player was worth. And I guess Ajax did much the same thing. So late on Wednesday, a bid of £35.5 million plus £2.5 to £3 million in realistic achievable add-ons. I don't know what they are, but realistic achievable add-ons, I've been told, as well as a 10% sell-on fee has now been agreed. Look, as I'm sure you know, personal terms have already been agreed with the player. A salary of something like 50, 60, 70,000 pounds a week has been suggested over a 5-year deal, plus an option for a further year. Kudus currently earns something like £15,000 a week at Ajax. Now, let me stress, this deal is far from done. The player has to pass his medical, which is scheduled to happen before the end of the week, which ultimately means that Tim Steidten is going to jump back into his private jet. I don't know if it's his private jet, but he'll jump back into a private jet, bound for Amsterdam for possibly the 4th time this summer in order to get the deal over the line. I'm sure Steidten will chaperone the player and his entourage over to London, get the medical done, and subsequently get that contract signed. I think Steidten's got a really good policy, a really good approach where he doesn't let that player out of his eyesight. It's hoped that this deal can be completed by the end of the week or over the weekend. But we have to learn as West Ham fans to be patient. Remember the other day when people thought there was something wrong with the Mavropanos deal because he was seen at the stadium at the weekend, and then people were thinking that come Monday morning he'll be the deal would be done and dusted. It doesn't work that way, does it? So let's learn to be patient, because if it doesn't happen before the end of the week or over the weekend, then I'm sure it will get done early, very early next week. At the moment, the player himself is currently in Bulgaria, along with the rest of the Ajax squad, as they prepare for the Europa League first round qualifying fixture against Ludogorets. That game is scheduled to be played later on today, on Thursday, at 7 p.m. Look, if Kudus is selected, then people will be asking, well, does that mean that he won't be available for West Ham in the same competition? But according to UEFA rules, he will still be able to represent us in the group stages of this competition. Because apparently, if a player turns out in the qualifying stages and then moves on to another club and plays in the same competition in the group stages, all will be fine. Correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I did read the rules before I did this show. So what does Kudus bring to West Ham United? Well, I think, as I've mentioned a few times before, I think he's the ideal Michail Antonio replacement. The strengths that we're going to be looking for in a player are quite similar to Antonio's. We need a player that can play as a lone striker. We need a player that can run the flanks. We need a player that can whip in crosses. We need a player that can hold off defenders, allowing other players to come in and into the attack. We need a player that can drop deep and defend. And we need a player that can create and score goals. Now, that's all the traits that Antonio has. They're all the qualities that we've seen of him, even as a striker, over these past couple of seasons. Kudus is a versatile footballer. He's able to play in a number of positions, primarily in attack, but he has been known to also play deeper in midfield. In fact, he started his career as a central midfielder and has rotated more to attacking positions throughout his career development. He has so many similarities in the way that Antonio plays. He is an ideal counter-attacking player where he's been accustomed to playing in teams who close down opponents, winning back ball possession and moving swiftly into a counter-attacking play. His pace and creativity are an ideal kind of game plan, are ideal for a game plan that Moyes utilizes, and it'll be music to Moyes' ears that this player can play in a counter-attacking setup. Kudus has showcased his versatility by also playing as a striker, a false number 9, playing out wide as well on the right. And when playing up top, he tends to drop into attacking midfield positions, primarily on the right-hand side. Kudus possesses impressive speed in short bursts, both with and without the ball, allowing him to confidently take on multiple opponents. His physical presence enables him to retain possession under pressure. He's got exceptional ball control skills, and he becomes a challenging player to dispossess due to his low centre of gravity and balance. He's also a clinical finisher with both his head and his left foot. He's the sort of player that can capitalize on limited scoring opportunities. Do you remember what Antonio once said? You've got to be able to play off scraps. And Kudus sounds like the type of player that can do that. If there are any negatives to his game, one is his lack of awareness when trying to help his teammates out defensively. As I said, he does tend to drop deep, but he's not always successful in cutting out opposition passing lines. We all know that Moyes expects his players to defend no matter what position they play in. So it'd be interesting to see what defensive disciplines Moyes will instill in him. I laugh because we want an attacking player. We don't necessarily want our attacking players to defend, but Moyes has other ideas. Another concern is his injury record. Over the last 3 years, he's missed an incredible 56 games due to various injuries. That is correct. I checked and double checked that. He's had a meniscal injury in 2020 where he missed 17 games. He had an ankle injury in 2021 where he missed 8 games. And in 2022, he missed another 17 games because of a fractured rib. I guess you could argue a fractured rib, someone gave him a nudge in the ribs, fair enough. Nothing he can do about that. But some of the other injuries, ankle injuries, meniscal, etc., can maybe be a little bit of a cause for concern. Now, many fans are wondering what position he will play in. And I've said already, his primary positions now are kind of central attacking midfield, a striker role, or even out on the right-hand side where Jared Bowen plays. But many people are suggesting that Kudus could likely play on the left side of attack as a replacement or in replacement for Benrahma. Now, here's something interesting. Kudus has never played on the left side of attack ever in his professional career. These days, like I said, he's deployed primarily as either an attacking midfielder or more prominently on the right side of attack or as a striker. And my gut says that he will interchange with Jared Bowen, giving Moyes the options of who he plays up front. He's already mentioned about playing Bowen up front. And by bringing in someone like Kudus, he can play out on the right, Bowen can play up front, or they can interchange where Kudus plays up front and Bowen stays out on the right-hand side. If we need any further evidence of Kudus being a likely replacement for Antonio, we've only got to look at the stats and see how they compare. Now, last season in the league, Kudus, his goal tally was much better. His conversion rate was much better. His shot accuracy, you can actually see from that stat, everything was a lot better than Antonio's. Shot accuracy a lot better. They were equal on assists, but chances created, take on success, aerial duel success, etc. He's got all of it. And that's the kind of player that you would want to have as an alternative to Antonio. With the Kudus deal imminent, there's still a suggestion that West Ham are not quite done in the transfer market just yet. Let's get this one over the line because I think he will be our fourth signing of the summer. And then we can focus on one more player. Now, people will think, oh, that'll be Jesse Lingard, of course. And it's quite possible. It's quite likely that Lingard will get a contract at West Ham, maybe for up to 6 months. But I think Moyes might still be looking for one more player. And there's rumour that it may still be an out-and-out striker. Now, look, we're not going to have an awful lot of money left. We've received circa 131 million pounds in the transfer market, for the players that we've sold. I'm not including add-ons. This is just the straight deals. But we've spent, and including the money that we're committing to signing Kudus, we would have spent around about 116 million pounds, something like that. So West Ham have still got something like 15 odd million in the bank. Now, clearly, it won't be enough to buy another player, but it may provide us with the option to spend some of that money to bring in maybe one or two loan signings. Now, of the areas that fans would like to strengthen, they talk about having a right back or a right wing back, which I don't necessarily think is a priority. Talk about a left back, which will only become a priority if there's renewed interest in Aaron Creswell leaving the club. And for another striker, as I've said. Now, of the two strikers that are prominent at the moment, being mentioned quite regularly, they are Seville's Youssef En-Nesyri and PSG's Hugo Ekitike. There's an awful lot of talk that Seville are severely cash-strapped and would not really welcome a loan deal. They need funds to bolster their squad, and they would rather sell En-Nesyri rather than loan him out. However, the potential lure of maybe having Pablo Fornals as a make weight, moving the other way, could tempt Seville. But I still don't think that will be enough. I still don't think that having Pablo Fornals coming in as a replacement for En-Nesyri will be enough for them. And I think they really want to have a cash deal happening there. Of course, the other player, as I've already mentioned, is Hugo Ekitike. Now, here's an interesting one because Ekitike has only just signed permanently for PSG. And let me explain. Last season, Ekitike was sent on loan from Reims to PSG, with apparently the original deal being an option to buy the player at the end of the season. Now, I don't know how or when, but apparently that option to buy became an obligation to buy. And PSG have only recently parted with £25 million for the permanent signing of player. However, the rumours are that they're now quite happy to let the player go, whether it be on loan or whether it be a permanent deal. He didn't have a great season last season, Ekitike at PSG. If you look at the stats and compare them to En-Nesyri's, you'd think that En-Nesyri is a much better striker all round. En-Nesyri scored 8 goals for Seville last season, whereas Ekitike only scored 2. He's got a better conversion rate, better shot accuracy, but Ekitike had better things like assists, better chances created, better take on success, better aerial duel success. So there is a player in there, and you've only got to look at the season before stats to realize how good a player Ekitike really is. Because again, I'm comparing the two players for the 21-22 season, and the stats are very, very different. You then see Ekitike, which is probably what attracted PSG to the player, having scored 10 goals for Reims in the league the season before last. Again, better conversion rate than En-Nesyri, better shot accuracy, better assists, better chances created, etc., etc. So you could see that there is a decent player in there, and just maybe his time wasn't right at PSG, and maybe he does need to go out on loan himself now to either another club or maybe even be sold to another club that can make better use of the player. There's an awful lot of competition as well in PSG, so the chances of the player getting much game time this season might be quite limited. Right, that's it. Thank you all for watching. Really appreciated. So just to recap, it looks like we're getting our 4th signing of the summer, and that could be the very exciting Mohammed Kudus. Who he replaces, you tell me. The one thing I forgot to mention, if we do bring in an out-and-out striker and Kudus as well, that might be what will happen to the likes of Danny Ings, Divine Mubama, and of course Antonio himself. It's quite interesting, but I think with a lot of rumours being knocking around over the summer that Antonio really wants to leave, I think it could be Antonio departing if we bring in Kudus and an attacking and a striker. Danny Ings will probably get limited game time, but may stay on and probably be looking to move him on in the January window if he doesn't move on this summer as well. So it's going to be all change. A lot of interesting things happening. The transfer window still got 9 days to go. Let's see what else comes up. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, and the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all very, very soon.